Hi everyone, welcome to IFAB Online.
Welcome to IFAB Online.
Welcome to IFAB Online.
Thanks for joining this session about how nonprofits are growing income and community internationally through digital channels. I'm here with two good friends of mine, Leonard Coyne from Soi Dog Foundation and Stephen O'Shea from Animals Asia, and they're going to explain a bit more about their backgrounds a bit later on. I am James Herlihy, Director of Digital at Mindwise, a full-service fundraising agency based in the Netherlands and with nonprofit clients all over the world. I've worked in digital strategy and development at fundraising agencies since 2013, and prior to that, I worked at Amnesty International, ActionAid Australia, and a number of other charities. I've worked with Leonard since 2013 and Stephen starting this year in the midst of the pandemic to grow their charity's international digital fundraising. And we're going to share some stories and insights on that work in this session. We're going to do that in three main parts. First, I'm going to take you through some fundamentals of digital donor acquisition. Then Leonard is going to tell some of the story of Soi Dog's fantastic growth through digital. And lastly, Stephen will share insights from Animal Asia's investment in digital in 2020. And we really hope that you can take away some useful examples and insights to consider adapting for your own organisation. Now, it's a jam-packed session covering a lot of territory, so let's kick off. And we start, of course, with the fundamentals. In the next 15 minutes, we'll cover the following topics: the evolving definition of audiences for fundraising, digital acquisition models, we'll look at a couple of those, channels and motivators for direct response, audience relevance, real-world responsiveness, and long-term investment and growth. So to start, let's talk about audience for fundraising. And we're talking about donor acquisition. So here's a conventional view of how fundraising works, the donor pyramid. So with the pyramid, fundraisers fish from a pool of prospects who haven't ever donated to you before. And we aim to get a single donation from a prospect. Then once we have that initial donation, we have an opportunity to get donors to step up their commitment to higher value forms of giving. It's like a marketing funnel with a mass of people lower down the funnel and fewer people higher up the funnel at higher levels of commitment. There's an important distinction about data in this picture. All of your donors are your owned data from this perspective, and they're in your donor database. But donor prospects, on the other hand, are cold audiences that you reach through second and third party data or publishers. Well, digital is kind of the same as this, but a bit different. We can still argue that there's a pyramid, but with email programs in particular, we have a crucial extra significant layer, that of subscribers who are not donors yet. These subscribers or leads might have come from a newsletter sign up on your website or another activity, and we'll look at some examples of those activities soon. Now, this pyramid kind of works for digital, but when it comes to online, I think that we need to look at our community from a slightly different angle. And we really need to rethink our approach to these groups of people who aren't donors yet. Now, to me, you have a greater online community that overlaps with, but is actually broader than your donor base. This community includes segments such as your email list, your social fan bases, people who engage with your social content, your website visitors, and so on. Now, some of this group, some of these people may be donors, but others aren't yet. This is a really important point, as these actions, say a social interaction, a like or a comment on Facebook, a petition signature, or a website visit, actually qualify people as prospects in a behavioural way. And we can target these people who engage with us in these ways with advertising or direct communication. In fact, when you consider all the ways that someone might interact with you online, I think that a spectrum of engagement with many gradations is actually more accurate. At one extreme, there's people who have never heard of you, then someone who's interacted with you once on Twitter, someone who follows you on Facebook and receives your emails, someone who recently signed your petition, and so on up to donors, people who support you with money, support you financially. So you have these donor groups, sure, and they're really important, but outside of this, you have that much bigger group of supporters who align with your mission in different ways. Okay, pyramid, spectrum, who really cares? Why is this important? It's important because we need to broaden the thinking of fundraisers beyond the simple worlds of donors and prospects. These different ways that your audience engages with you online provide you with different ways to qualify, target, and create conversion funnels. And that is really, really important with digital donor acquisition. Now I want to move on to the nuts and bolts. What does digital donor acquisition actually look like? There are a few common models used by nonprofits: two-step campaigning, which we'll explain in a minute, direct to donation, peer-to-peer fundraising, and there are others as well. We're going to focus just on the first two as they're the most applicable in the international context. Let's start with a two-step campaign. A two-step campaign involves a first step where you generate a lead through a non-financial engagement, then a supported journey to the second step, which is donor conversion. And that first non-financial action might be any from a range of things. For example, a brochure download, like this one from the Thrombosis Foundation Netherlands, this quiz from Bush Heritage Australia, this educational online game from the Heart Foundation Netherlands, a petition like this one from Soi Dog, a hand raiser, or in this case, a paw raiser from Animals Asia, and there are lots of other possibilities. Now, we call these two-step campaigns as it's vital that you plan out the whole supporter journey, including donor conversion, not just focus on the first touch point, which is lead generation. Speaking of the supporter journey, let's look at that in a little more detail. There's a real range of complexity in your options for supporter journey. Supporter journeys can be really simple, like this one. We serve ads on Facebook and Instagram to various audiences. When someone clicks on the ad, they go through to a Facebook lead form, which is a data capture device that sits in Facebook. And when that person submits the lead form, their data flows through to your telemarketing conversion program, and they also receive a thank you email. Pretty simple. And then the supported journey can be more complex and involve higher investment. So let's look at a Soi Dog two-step campaign as an example. We start with 2 web pages, a step 1 petition and a step 2 donation page. We have a set of channels driving traffic to step 1 petition page, including social advertising and paid search. Then after someone signs the petition, they go on a number of conversion paths. They get asked for a donation on the petition thank you page. They go on a 3 to 4 week email journey. They get retargeted with donation advertising. And of course, they go into your telemarketing conversion program. And then after someone signs up to become a donor, there is a welcome journey from there. So which supported journey do you choose? There's really no right or wrong with this. It depends on what your needs are. For example, do you really just want leads to convert on the phone? Then go for a simple, lighter journey. On the other hand, maybe you want to maximize your digital donor conversion, or maybe you want a bigger splash campaign with a bigger organic search footprint and which integrates with a public relations effort. If that's the case, then you might invest in a more comprehensive supported journey like this. One really important thing is test light. You really should test propositions in the lightest, cheapest way possible before deciding what to invest more in. And Stephen's going to show an example of a 2-step test campaign we did with Animals Asia a couple of months ago. Okay, the second digital donor acquisition model I'll talk briefly about is pretty much what it says on the tin: direct to donation acquisition. Direct to donation acquisition is driving non-donor audiences direct to donate to you online. Here's a really simple example we had running for Orbis International USA recently. We have a Facebook ad driving various audiences to donate at a donation landing page. Pretty straightforward. Direct to donation, however, can be hard work. It can be actually quite hard to convince someone who's never donated to you to do so for a first time. So we really need to understand the tools available, and particularly when it comes to audience targeting. With some audiences, you are known to them, and what we're trying to do is push them further up that spectrum of engagement. For example, retargeting your recent website visitors. These people know of you, but haven't necessarily ever donated to you. The interest they've shown you by visiting your website recently qualifies them as prospects for donation. Then some audiences are truly cold, but can still be well qualified. For example, lookalike audiences. A lookalike audience is where you can identify a seed audience, then get a platform like Facebook to identify other audiences or other individuals who share the same characteristics as that seed audience. This is actually a really powerful tool and can work well to find you people who share the same attributes as your donors particularly. Now, direct to donation can work, but like I said, it can be hard going. So make sure you test small and be really clear on your proposition, your targeting, and your messaging. So what are the differences and benefits of these two different models, the 2-step campaigning and the direct to donation? Well, two of the most important ones are future conversion opportunity and cost. To illustrate first the future conversion opportunity, let's say organisation X does really well with the direct donation campaign and they convert 1,000 new donors directly. That's 1,000 leads that organisation X has for future development. Then let's say that organisation Y runs a two-step campaign. Now, as part of that campaign, organisation Y also converts 1,000 donors immediately for future development. But the big difference is that organisation Y also acquires this big group of additional email and phone leads who may not have donated to them immediately, but are now part of the community, receiving updates. So we know from past research that some of this group at least will convert to become donors in the months and years ahead at a time of their choosing. So the two-step campaign may appear to deliver more benefit, but then there's the other side to benefit, which is the cost. Generally, a directed donation campaign will involve less parts online, and so will be a cheaper setup than the two-step campaign. Moving on with our fundamentals, I want to share a point about motivators for direct response and the channels that connect you with new audiences up here at the front of the campaign on the left. Now, it's important to understand what motivates people to respond to different propositions and how different channels are relevant in different situations. To illustrate, we've got different types of lead generating activity on the left, and we've got our audience on the right. Now, some lead gen actions involve a compelling proposition with strong social potential. For example, up the top, we've got a fun "Which Aussie animal are you?" quiz, or a shocking petition about an albino dolphin that's been mistreated in a grubby aquarium. Now, people aren't necessarily out there online searching for these topics, so we need to utilize more push marketing to get our creative into the faces of people. So, for example, things like social advertising, YouTube advertising, display network banner ads. There are lead gen resources that are of practical use to significant groups of people. When someone's diagnosed with a common condition like thrombosis or Parkinson's disease, they and their loved ones will typically take to Google to find out more about it. In this case, we can use SEO, search engine optimization, content marketing, and paid search, including your Google grant, to capture this interest and drive it towards a downloadable resource, which people exchange their contact details for. And at MindWise, we work with a number of health organisations on this kind of strategy, and it works really well for donor acquisition. Okay, I have a couple more important fundamentals of digital donor acquisition to cover, so let's move on. Here are some successful campaigns my team and I have run with our charity partners. Brochures on the symptoms of Parkinson's disease and how diet can impact people with Parkinson's. A survey challenging Australians to find out how much they really know about our unique wildlife. A petition calling for protection of natural environments from oil drilling. A poll on people's attitudes towards childhood vaccination. A petition calling for more funding from suicide prevention. And a questionnaire on cardiovascular disease and lifestyle for the over 40s. To me, there's one factor in all of these campaign propositions that makes them successful, and it's the most important factor in cause-related campaigning. It's audience relevance. All of these propositions are highly relevant to significant groups of people. That is really, really important. Now, sometimes charities aren't really realistic about what really interests people outside the organisation, and this can make for some terrible campaign results and failure. So make sure that you're really realistic about what's relevant to people out there and you're clear on that. Now, if audience relevance is the most important factor to making a successful campaign proposition, then real-world responsiveness is one of the biggest influences on whether a proposition is relevant or not. Put simply, if you aren't talking about events in the real world that are related to your cause, then don't expect people to see you as relevant. And the clearest example of this is with disaster response fundraising. People out there donate to disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis, and they'll often donate to organisations they've never donated to before. And this behaviour is largely driven by media saturation. When a disaster hits, it's all over the morning radio, the TV, the newspapers, social media, and people are talking about it. People are emotionally impacted by the severity of the disaster for the victims, and it occupies our thoughts while it's receiving that media attention. As soon as that media attention drops off though, so does our attention, and quickly. And there's no better illustration of this than Google organic search behaviour. Here's search behaviour for terms related to the Beirut explosion when it hit in early August 2020. The explosion hit on August the 4th, and you see a huge spike in related search on that day and the 5th. But already on the 6th, that search volume is back down to 25% of what it was at its peak, and it keeps dropping. And we see this same trend with every disaster. So what's the takeaway for digital donor acquisition? You must be ready to respond on key online channels, email, paid search, social media, and so on, within 24 hours of an event that's highly visible and relevant to your mission. It is possible to respond to unforeseen events like this. And there are two types of tools that you need to develop to be prepared. And those are processes and templates. To explain just briefly, processes need to streamline internal decision-making about what to respond to and how to respond, and allow staff the space to prioritize this work if it's decided that you will respond to an event. And templates aim to do as much of the actual communications work upfront as possible. So as far as possible, you can fill in the blanks in, for example, your email templates and template search ads and launch your campaigns really quickly. And in these situations, speed of response and using the right keywords is far more important than wordsmithing and finding the perfect copy. With this sort of preparation, when unforeseen high-profile events suddenly happen that are relevant to your mission, you will be able to translate that spike in public interest into revenue to help your beneficiaries. Okay, I want to round out this fundamental section looking at what long-term growth through digital investment can look like. I'll share a model I built for an organisation considering a market entry a couple of years ago. Now, here's how it works. Sustained investment in online acquisition grows your donor base and your online community. And with the right conversion programs, this growth leads to growth in your warm appeal income, your monthly donor income, and other streams like unsolicited income, legacies, major gifts, and so on. Now, the following graphs are based on that investment scenario model that accounted for a huge range of real-world fundraising factors. In blue down the bottom, we see continuous online investment in acquisition and community growth, which we pause twice a year to focus exclusively on warm appeals. And you see over 10 years, even with an unsubscribe rate factored in, that we have significant ongoing email list growth. This acquisition and email list growth leads to continuous growth in our monthly donor base, even factoring in attrition, and our one-off donor base over time. That's the grey and the yellow lines. And we see that warm email income and unsolicited online income also increase significantly over time, along with that growing online footprint. Now, it's important to note with an investment scenario like this that there is a J-curve where for a period, maybe 18 to 24 months or a bit longer, you have invested more funds than you've raised and you're in the red. But after that, you break even and then you really start reaping the rewards of that commitment. You've got a big online community and donor base, great response to your warm appeals, unsolicited income coming in, and a whole lot more impact for your cause in the long run. With that said, we're going to move on to our first case study, Soi Dog, which is a story of development not unlike this scenario that we see here. Over to you, Leonard.
Thank you, James, and hi, everyone. Welcome to IFAB. My name is Leonard Coyne. I'm a digital fundraising consultant and have worked extensively with the Soi Dog Foundation now for, probably over 10 years. By way of introduction, Soi Dog is a medium-sized animal welfare charity. It's based in Phuket, Thailand, and works across Southeast Asia, helping homeless dogs and cats. Soi Dog's financial growth has been almost exclusively through digital fundraising. In the beginning, being a small charity based in Thailand and inexperienced with fundraising, digital was, if you think about it, really the organization's only choice. And digital served Soi Dog really, really well. As you can see here, the right-hand graph, Soi Dog's achieved a 6-fold increase in revenue since 2011, and again, that being essentially 100% through digital. Now, James spoke earlier about two-step campaigning, so let's jump in and take a high-level look at what I consider to be the 4 important pillars for a successful two-step campaign. Starting with the first pillar, that's focused advertising for lead prospecting. This is usually done through Facebook due to Facebook's powerful psychographic targeting capabilities, which allow you to precision target for qualified candidate leads. As David Ogilvy of advertising fame once said, if you're not marketing to the right people, well, you're not going to sell very much. And on the right here is a great example of qualification through Facebook's detailed targeting. Let's take this apart just a little bit. So in this instance, the candidate lead must first of all have a broad interest in the topic of animal welfare, and additionally have a high probability of being a pet owner. Further, they must be interested in vegetarian or vegan related topics, And finally, they must have an interest in one or more of the specific animal welfare charities that we see here. So I think you'd probably agree with me, it's a pretty safe assumption that someone meeting all four of these criteria would be a good candidate lead for Soi Dog or other similar animal welfare organizations. The second pillar, as in the commercial sector, the classic and proven marketing funnel applies equally to charitable giving. Here's a variant of that funnel using charity terminology instead of commercial terminology. So at the top, people become aware of your organization and its mission and hopefully grant you permission to communicate further with them. The next step is engagement, generating further emotional awareness in this audience of your mission. Obviously, this followed by donor conversion, and finally, of course, retention and maximization of lifetime giving value. The third pillar, using multiple communication mediums. In digital marketing, it's been unequivocally proven that getting your message across repeatedly and through multiple channels reinforces and strengthens your message, which results in a stronger funnel and more new donors. Fourth and final pillar, a well thought out supporter journey. Let's take a look here at a map of a typical two-step campaign journey. So on the left, we see initial traffic being driven to a petition landing page through email, search, social advertising, and other mechanisms. The objective here in driving that traffic is that people will take the lead action as well as give you permission to communicate with them, opt into your communications. After that, when someone's opted in, people then enter into an email engagement journey, which is seen here at the top left in blue. This ultimately leading us to asking them to make a one-time donation to, in this instance, Soi Dog. Now, for those who don't initially give, they then are served retargeting advertisements, encouraging them to revisit the landing page and become donors. For those that did make a single gift, they then enter a single email journey, seen in the top right corner there, this email journey being a further engagement, which ultimately leads to asking them for monthly support. And of course, you can ask questions after the presentation on this or any of the other sections of our presentation today. Now, as James mentioned earlier, digital is a long-term play. So I want to share some quick comments on the long-term value of leads and website visitors. Simple fact is, as James alluded to earlier, the majority of your two-step leads will not initially become donors. Don't despair though, a goodly portion of them will. But to the point, how can we tap into this unrealized opportunity? Well, let's look at an example from Soi Dog. At the top of this slide, we see the results from a long-running two-step campaign of Soi Dogs. Really good results, great results in fact, but what about the majority of those petition signers who did not become donors? Well, what do? Ask them again, of course. So we went back to these non-donors with a much lower dollar level ask. As you can see on the right of the graph, this resulted in a significant number of new donors being acquired, similar to that of the campaign launch we see on the left-hand side of the graph. Now, here's a more structured assessment of the long-term value of leads. This time it's from Bush Heritage, which is an Australian charity working here in Australia to conserve native environments. We did a study with Bush Heritage, who had been running a rolling two-step campaign for about 2.5 years. Leads went into a calling program, and they also received emails from Bush Heritage. After a number of weeks, the phone agency would stop calling, and the leads were then deemed non-contactable. Now, rather than discarding these leads, Bush Heritage continued to nurture them through an engagement-based communication strategy with periodic fundraising asks. And the result? Through active engagement and nurturing, RG conversion increased 58% on top of the calling campaign, at obviously a much lower cost than telemarketing. So let's have a look at some creative examples from two-step campaigns. And we'll start off with looking at a couple of landing pages. On the left is a petition from Lifeline, as James indicated, an Australian charity working to prevent suicide. In the center, a donation page from Soi Dog. And over on the right here, another petition, this one from Action for Dolphins. Let's cover some important best practices for your landing pages. First and foremost, short, powerful, and to the point copy. This is not print media, it's not direct mail. On the internet, people digest content fast, and consequently, your messaging should be short, powerful, and effective. The majority of transactions, somewhere around 80% nowadays, done on the internet are done on mobile phones. So it pretty much goes without saying that your pages should be mobile optimized. And again, the landing page message should be consistent with the messaging that has driven people there. Consistent messaging throughout the entire donor journey. As regards your donation forms, keep them simple, intuitive, and as short as possible. Also, a very real key consideration when fundraising internationally is the ability to allow donors to donate in their own currency. Regarding dollar handles, price points for lack of better words, I suggest using simple and tangible dollar handles which are consistent with your proposition's case for support. Some very basic, simple, non-confusing examples here from Soi Dog, which I quite like, and were very, very effective. Okay, let's now take a look at some Facebook ad creative and talk a little bit about testing. The key success factor with these two-step campaigns is testing, learning, and adjusting your creative based on these learnings. And this is a fantastic example. If we look at the ad on the left, it had half the acquisition costs of the one on the right. And testing allowed us to capture this insight and to adjust our creative accordingly. Now, testing can get really, really messy and confusing. It sounds pretty basic, but it often isn't. So if you don't have a lot of experience initially with doing digital tests, keep your tests simple and manageable. Hereby example is a great example. The test is as simple as which button works better, learn more or donate now. Let's now look at some example emails. These first two examples are engagement emails warming people up for a financial ask. And noting that in both instances, people are being asked to take a secondary, soft, non-financial action. This is a great practice, and it's really proven in digital marketing to increase, ultimately, financial conversion rates. On the left, by example, we're asking the reader to social share the content, and on the right, to engage further with video content consistent with the overall campaign proposition. So here's two fundraising emails. And again, much like a landing page, note the directness and the quick, easy to read copy. The email on the right is a chaser email sent a few days after the initial email to those people who've not yet donated. Chasers produce great revenue in two-step journeys, and sometimes they even have better results than the original email. Short story, when architecting your two-step journey, always include chasers. Let's wrap up things by covering a few of the factors for success with two-step campaigns. First and foremost, as James was speaking to at the start of the presentation, a compelling proposition. And that proposition should be consistent throughout the campaign journey and across the various mediums that you're using in the campaign. Secondly, targeting the right people. Again, in Ogilvy's words, if you aren't marketing to the right people, you're not going to sell very much. Third, a solid, well-defined journey applying the principles of the digital marketing funnel. Next, high-quality creative is absolutely critical. Having poor creative is guaranteed to kill your campaign. So make sure you have the right people available to produce quality creative. Fifth, having your tracking set up properly for measurement and optimization. It's been outside the scope of this presentation to talk about tracking and optimization, but for now, suffice to say that it is critical to your campaign success. And finally, solid landing pages, which are aligned with the campaign proposition, are donor-centric, and have forms that are easy to use, short and intuitive, and let the donor donate in their own currency. Now, that's it for me. I'm going to turn things over to Stephen O'Shea from Animals Asia Foundation.
Thanks, Leonard, and thank you for joining us today about this presentation that we're doing on digital and growth. My name is Stephen O'Shea. I'm the Global Regular Giving Manager at Animals Asia, and I'm going to take you on our journey through digital investment in 2020 and give you some examples of what we've done this year with James and Leonard. So what we'll cover today is our context and kind of how we started our journey and the drivers and the motivators for that. I'm going to talk you through our direct to donation campaign that we ran and that's currently ongoing. I'm going to talk through the two-step lead generation campaign that we did with James and Leonard, and also talk about our future plans with digital. And then just throughout the presentation, really just give you some things to consider when you're running your own campaign. Everyone's context is different, so there'll be different bits in there for different organisations, and hopefully you'll find something useful to take away from that. So just to give a quick introduction to Animals Asia as well, we are an animal welfare organisation focusing on improving the lives of animals across Asia, Southeast Asia mainly. We have three pillars of work that we do. We work with captive animal welfare to ensure that animals kept in zoos, facilities and attractions are given the best care possible in those circumstances. We do a lot of work on the cat and dog meat trade and trying to change attitudes towards cat and dogs in Southeast Asia. And probably what we're most famous for and what we're known for is our bear sanctuaries and rescuing moon bears and other bears from bear bar farming in Southeast Asia. So when I joined Animals Asia last year, we had 6 core markets where we were present in, and these were Australia, Germany, Hong Kong, Italy, the United Kingdom and the United States. And it was very much a DM heavy program. Most of our individual giving income came from cash appeals, from direct mail. We'd barely done any digital fundraising and we'd barely done any telemarketing. So when I came into Animals Asia, there was a heavy focus on direct mail. It was a mainly offline program. There was no investment in acquisition at all, no digital acquisition. Although we had the structure set up for individual giving, we didn't really have a team of individual giving specialists in the organisation. This was also a time when we had a rapidly declining donor base and our income was also falling. So we had a bit of a leaky bucket scenario going on. We couldn't replace the donors faster than we were losing them. And this all came together at a time when the organisation had plans for significant growth. We'd agreed an agreement with the government of Vietnam to build another bear sanctuary, and we needed significant income and significant growth. So it really was quite a challenging time to start acquisition. However, we recruited a team of individual giving specialists in 2019, and we quickly realised that our new strategy had to focus on regular giving recruitment. We needed that regular income month on month to be able to plan for this big next push for the organisation. I came in and noticed there were lots of products for our donors, and you can see a snapshot of some of those there. We had bear sponsorship programs, we had virtual giving products, we had a regular giving product that was named after one of our bears. It was confusing internally, and it was definitely confusing for our donors. So we really had to think about where we were going to focus this growth. We had limited budget available. We really needed to deliver acquisition at scale with a high ROI to win the trust of the board and to get more investment in acquisition. So we had a lot of choices, we had a lot of options, and we needed to make a decision on what we needed to do. So before we rushed into anything, we needed to consider the channels that were available to us and what would work in terms of our budget and our reach. We needed to focus on where we were going to spend this money, which markets were going to be the most profitable for us. As I mentioned, we didn't have much money available, and we had to think about what was going to get our biggest return and our biggest bang for the buck. We needed to think about which channels were going to provide the lowest levels of attrition, as we needed this to really break even quickly and provide a long-term ROI. as mentioned in those 2 points. And so we looked around at our competitors, and you know, as with anyone in charity, we look what our competitors do and what had worked for them. We knew that digital acquisition had worked really well for Soi Dog, as Leonard just mentioned. So we decided on running paid advertising on Facebook would be our first test. Once we decided on the channel and the medium, we then took a lot of time to speak to agencies, freelancers and consultants to really get a good idea of who we wanted to work with and what would work for us as an organisation. And I really can't stress how important that is. You need to find a setup that's going to work in the context of your organisation. Animals Asia is a global team, lots of people working remotely. We really needed a setup that was going to work and that slotted into that structure. So I can't emphasize that enough. And I really do feel like we found the dream team with James and Leonard. So now that was the decisions that we made and that led us to launching our first campaign. So I'm going to talk now about our direct to donation campaign that we launched in February. So it was just shortly after the COVID-19 outbreak in China. It was gaining a lot of media attention. And it had real world relevance, as James mentioned in his earlier slides. We were directly affected by the pandemic in China in the early stages of it. Our bear sanctuary was in the heart of China, and we had real trouble getting supplies, medical equipment, protective equipment through to our bear sanctuaries. So we decided to go out with some ads, almost like an emergency appeal style, asking people to donate so that we could keep our stocks running high and we didn't run low on food and medicine for our bears. Initially, we just limited the targeting to the 6 markets that we were in, as I mentioned at the start, but we actually realized quite quickly that we didn't really need to do that, and actually we could service donors from all over the world with a digital journey. So at that point, we expanded the targeting to global targeting. This meant 2 things really. One, it meant that we were reaching a lot more people, and it also drove down our costs on Facebook, as Facebook was able to optimize in the ads in countries that were responding the best. There was an urgency in the message of the creative, and it worked. Our cost per acquisition or cost per donation was £3.68. These were mainly cash givers who'd never given to the organisation before. And so we were really, really encouraged by these results. I'd never seen anything like it. But soon Facebook started rejecting our ads and our campaign was being shut down. And we assumed this was due to a lot of the misinformation that was being spread at the time around COVID. But we did know that this could work for us. We definitely saw huge potential in this medium. So we took the time to regroup, and we thought we needed to relaunch the creative and focus on regular giving asks. We all of our creative, all of our ads had a join us message. We were able to rope in some celebrity supporters, which made a huge difference. And all of our landing pages were also geared towards regular giving. So donation pages that donated to give monthly, being really clear about joining us and starting a movement, helping us to save more bears. We thought about how we were going to scale up the campaign. And after some discussions, we decided that if our ROI remained consistently strong over a couple of days, we would increase our budget incrementally. So this is what we did. When we noticed return on investment starting to decline, we would provide new creative and refresh the creative every month or so, as when we started to see the ROI degrade. There's lots of different approaches to creative that we've taken. You can see some examples there. We used a mixture of video and still. We tried hard-hitting bears in cages videos. We did light-hearted videos of bears playing, lots of different tone, lots of different playful ads, some really serious, some quite harrowing. And it's really good to have a mixture of messages and just test and see what works. And so these were the results. You can see this graph is showing our new regular givers over the last 4 years, starting in 2016. And then you can see what happens in 2020. It just lifts off. The exponential growth of this is just, it's been a real change for Animals Asia. We've doubled our regular donors, and I've recently been told we've gone past 10,000 since I did this slide. And I don't need to tell you that means a huge jump in monthly income. which is really, really important for us as we head into a huge year for Animals Asia. We also recruited lots of cash givers, so people giving one-off donations, and this income actually almost offset the media costs that we were paying. So we were essentially acquiring regular donors for free from Facebook, which was also incredible. And we decided that we would put these new cash givers into an email journey that would aim to convert them towards regular giving. And so again, this is the long tail effects of a campaign like this. These prospects and these one-off donors will continue to give to us, and we're hoping that over the months and years we'll convert even more regular givers to Animals Asia. This is an example of some of the creative that we're using to convert regular givers. You'll see is a very heavy focus on a regular giving ask, and really tying it into the story that they've been shown so far. That was our direct donation campaign, and it was an enormous success for us, but we didn't want to put all our eggs in one basket. So I'm going to talk now about our two-step campaign that we did with Mindwise and with Leonard doing our targeting. We went through a fairly lengthy process to develop some different propositions, which was fantastic, and brought in people from all over the organisation to help out with this. And we ended up going with three different routes of propositions. So one was a petition style, asking people to show their support for the government of Vietnam for banning bear-bow farming. The Paw Raiser pledge, which James mentioned earlier, so asking our core audience to stand with Vietnam's bio bears until everyone is free. And then a bit more of a playful BuzzFeed style which bear are you quiz, talking about the different characteristics of bears. And we really felt that those three propositions tick different boxes for our audiences and relevant to different audiences. We had the petition style for our more activist audience. The Paw Raiser was definitely something that resonates with our core audience in terms of its tone and the way that they like to be communicated with. And the quiz was a bit more of a light-hearted approach. The process was quite difficult, and there were lots of unforeseen challenges, but it was so worth it getting it done. A lot of the petition ads were rejected for being political from Facebook, so we had to think about at the 11th hour how to change that. And we changed just tweaked the messaging slightly to avoid the ads being rejected for being political. The data integration between our systems was quite a challenge. So at Animals Asia, we have a very specific setup for our data and our information flowing between systems. So that needed to be considered. Because we were global, we needed to think about the different privacy policies and data protection statements that we need to run in different markets, especially in the European context with GDPR. And we also decided that we were only going to test in our strongest English-speaking markets. So for the initial test phase, we tested in the US and the UK. And the results were really, really encouraging. We had a really low cost per lead, but very low rates of phone capture, only 5%. Email capture was really strong at 60%. And of the people that we were able to contact by phone, 7% converted to regular giving, which we also found really encouraging. The phone capture was really low because at that point we were applying the most stringent interpretations of data capture by GDPR. And it's something that we realized that we didn't actually need to do in the US. So I'll come on to talk about that in a second. We saw enough potential in the test to roll out this campaign in the US and Australia. We revised our opt-in statements to make them comply with the local market regulations, but allowing us to capture as much data as possible. We've developed a really strong email journey with Mindwise, using all their experience and using this journey that you've seen a few times now to build engagement with donors and then take them towards a fundraising conversion ask geared towards regular giving. We were really lucky as well that this message aligned very well with our Christmas appeal and our big launch of our campaign for next year. So the stars aligned for this one, and but I would definitely say that if you can tie this into your broader organisational goals and your broader organisational strategic messaging, then you're going to have a much greater impact. As James and Leonard mentioned, it's all about getting your message out consistently across different channels and repeating that message. I'm just going to talk a bit now about other things that we've been doing to really just buff up the campaign, really, and make it a truly integrated campaign. So it's really important to develop your digital channels alongside your main acquisition channels. So alongside all of the stuff that we've been doing with our Facebook ads, direct to donation and lead gen, we also started doing Google search ads using the Google grant and paid search ads. And so you can see here we're appearing nicely at the top of a donation search there. We've got our display retargeting adverts all sorted. So anyone that shows an interest in making a donation to Animals Asia is then retargeted with strong creative. And we've also looked at our search engine optimization by looking at our web pages and making sure that we're appearing as high up as possible through organic search. So what are our future plans? We're going to continue both campaigns, testing lots of different propositions, testing lots of creative. We're now going to start looking at diversifying our product promotions, so offering Bear sponsorship as a regular giving product. We're going to continue to test and learn, and I can't emphasize how important that is to really continue that learning and that testing process. We are now running ads in native languages. So originally the campaign was just in English. We've now started running ads in German language to people in German speaking countries, as we noticed that we were getting a lot of response there, and that's performing really well. And the main thing I think now that we need to look at is our landing page testing. And this is hugely important. Just doing those little tweaks, those marginal gains to improve the process for prospective donors and to improve the conversion rates and average gift. So just to recap on all the things I've covered today, Animals Asia, we just decided to focus on one area and I think we did it really well. We took the time to put together the right team. And again, I can't emphasize how important that is. It's got to be a team that works for your organization. You've got to be prepared to do a lot of testing and a lot of creative. Facebook advertising is a content hungry monster, and you really need to have the internal setup to create lots of different variants of ads. So I'd really advise you to make sure that you've got those mechanisms in place before you embark on this journey. You may have to outsource it. We were very lucky that we had a lot of capacity in-house to do it. But yeah, it's really, really labor intensive with the creative. So just be prepared to put in a lot of hours trawling through your image libraries and putting together videos. Not all things are going to work with your cause and your sector. So we're very lucky, again, in animal welfare, we have access to lots of cute bears. But it may not, this approach may not work for a disability charity or a homeless charity. So you need to figure out what works for your cause and your sector. It might be a value exchange, it might be something else. So find the proposition that works for you, and when it does, sit back and enjoy a well-earned carrot like Tuan is doing here. And so that's it, guys. That's our presentation today. Thank you so much for coming along, and look forward to hearing all your questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.